So in a previous video, I was talking about your 10 defining moments and your 7 critical choices and your 5 pivotal people in your life. And you can go back to that video. It's somewhere here on my feed here. You can go find it, and I will. But I want to talk about one of my defining moments. And I mentioned in that video that I was a volunteer with the Canadian Red Cross and went to New York after 9/11. I went in December, so a lot of things had changed already in those 2 months. And I worked in the volunteer center where we were recruiting and supporting volunteers. So the defining moment, I mean, the whole thing was a defining moment, like just being in New York City. I was there when they took the spire. If you remember, that was just what was all that was left over of one of the World Trade Centers. And when that spire came down, I didn't see it, but I was in the city and did see it, like the space afterwards. And I've got some funny stories about that, about how I got behind the security line, seeing things that I shouldn't have seen. But anyway, the defining moment was working with one of the volunteers, and she was near tears. And she was doing some work, and she was supposed to be working out front in, welcoming people and putting them wherever they needed to go when they came in to see somebody to be, they wanted to be placed in a volunteer position or whatever it is that they needed. There was a person like a receptionist. And what happened is that they started to butt heads really bad. That was likely one of the occasions when they figured out that having a volunteer there for 4 weeks is about 2 weeks too many in a disaster response, especially of one that size. So anyway, what I did was to take the volunteer, not the one who was there longer, because she was already in her position and doing what she needed, but there's this other volunteer who was just was really, really struggling. So I kind of took her under my wing. I was in the process of creating some policies and not policies, but some operating procedures for the next group of volunteers coming in, because I left on New Year's Eve or Christmas Eve, and they weren't getting volunteers in until after New Year's. I think there was a week break, and so they weren't going to have anybody for a handoff. So I was creating some of the handoff documents. And what happened is that she was good enough on the computer to follow instructions, but she wasn't really she needed some help still. So what I did was I would have her read over my instructions and go through them, because I sometimes miss steps when I'm creating instructions. So we did this, and I would create the instructions. She would go through it. She was also an English teacher, or a retired English teacher. And so she could also check for my grammar and did I miss any words when I was typing it up and all of that. So I worked with her, and we worked together really well. She helped me. But the piece that got to me was the day, I can't remember if she was leaving or I was leaving. One of us was leaving. And she gave me this hug and whispered in my ear, "If it wasn't for you, I would never have stayed." And when I realized how much impact that had on her life, for being the volunteer who got to stay and make a difference instead of one who left, I'm getting teared up, instead of the one who left and was bitter about their experience with the American Red Cross, about being a volunteer and likely feeling less than. And I don't feel like I did anything special, but it was definitely a defining moment for me. And that's likely been one of the reasons that I've continued helping people who were having different kinds of struggles over the last few years. For me to have the impact on someone who was making the decision on whether to stay or go, I don't take that lightly. I'm working with business owners who are struggling with, where do they want to go with their business, because it just doesn't feel that it's right anymore. Things are okay, but it just doesn't feel inside like they're doing all that they could do, and feeling like there's something more for them in some way. So if you watch to the end of the video, please put in the comments and so that I know that somebody watched to the end of the video.